Welcome to the Independent Advisors Podcast, where we dive into the world of stocks, tradable markets, and financial planning with Jessup Wealth Management's Chief Investment Officer, Mark McEvely, and CEO, Matt Jessup. You'll hear tips, tricks, and strategies to address your financial well-being, and most importantly, conveyed in a way that everyone can understand. Here are your hosts, Mark and Matt.
Welcome to episode 336 of the Independent Advisors Podcast. Today, we are deviating from our normal schedule of events to chat with a very special guest and close friend of mine, Lauren Kroger, who is a luxury travel advisor for Huffman Travel. She specializes in creating highly personalized luxury itineraries and is a certified Wanderlist advisor, helping clients thoughtfully plan extraordinary travel experiences. So we're going to discuss a range of topics today, but Lauren, we're happy to have you on.
Thank you. That was quite the endorsement.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And for those who don't know, Lauren is our voice of the intro and outro to the podcast. So kind of a funny story how you and my wife Kenzie met is you both worked for Channel 7. And you fast forward a few months after that, me and your husband Ethan meet and we become really good friends. So when Matt and I started the podcast, you were obviously the choice for the intro and outro with your news voice, as we used to call it.
Which I don't think I can still do. So I'm sure I sound nothing like the intro and outro today, but it is what it is.
Well, it was funny because like when we first did it, because obviously of your news background,
right.
People are like, who's the person that's doing the intro and outro? Like super professional voice. And I was like, yeah, she's a rock star. We were actually getting more feedback on that than the actual podcast.
Oh my
at
gosh,
first,
that's so funny.
Yeah, so it was great. But now you've kind of transitioned into a different career, which is luxury travel advisor. So
yes.
I guess just tell me a little bit about your professional background and how you got to where you are today working in the travel industry.
Okay. So way back when, Kenzie and I were, overnight working together at Channel 7, our friendship began at 4 a.m.
Graveyard shift.
Yes, graveyard shift. And I got married at that same time in 2018, went on my honeymoon in Kenya, and it was my first time using a travel advisor. And it just opened my eyes to this whole world that I didn't know was still so, current and as big as it is. And I would say it's really since then even had this amazing resurgence because of probably the pandemic, which is crazy. But so I worked with the travel advisor for the first time. It opened my eyes to the industry. I started sending cold emails. I had driven by Huffman Travel a million times because I'm from Dayton. And I always thought for some reason that it was just, I don't know, some little old lady selling trips to Gatlinburg, whatever. People have this antiquated idea of travel agents. That's what I thought. So I saw that I had mutual friends with someone in the office, sent her an email, and a month later, I was at Huffman Travel, and I've just absolutely loved it.
Nice. So you've always kind of loved travel throughout your life, and you were in the au pair business at one point, and you worked and lived in Milan. So tell me about that a little bit.
So I've always loved to travel, was fortunate to travel with my family. Then when I was 19, a good friend of mine was working as an au pair in Milan, and she had to come home for a family emergency and basically said, will you fill in for me for the summer? And I'm like, of course. I have no plans.
Hard
Scrap
to
all
pass
other
that
plans.
up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but I think that really solidified my love of travel. And I think the greatest gift you can give anyone in those formative years is to be able to travel and have those experiences. And so now as a mom, I always think about that with my son, which it's like I want to help him get out there as much as he can and feel like he has the confidence to do those kinds of things, because being able to not only live in another country, a different culture, but then on the weekends, of course, it was hopping wherever I could go. Right. So, and that for me was just, I was always thinking about after that, how can I get back out to form more friendships and kind of family ties almost around the world, which there aren't a lot of industries where you can do that.
Right, exactly. Well, before we get a little deeper into this, in the intro, we talked about you being a Wanderlist advisor. Can you just briefly explain kind of what that is?
Yes. So you'll love this. It was actually formed by our consortium in partnership with wealth advisors. So we're part of a group called Virtuoso, and it's basically this conglomerate of high-end agencies, and they worked with wealth advisors to say basically how can we work together to help people think long-term. So it's this idea of 5-year travel planning, or in some cases 10-year travel planning, which we try to do with our clients regardless. But some people really want to be intentional about it, and they'll sit down and bring their whole family. So, I mean, maybe their 10-year-old has no idea that they want to go to Costa Rica, but they've always been really interested in wildlife, and they've got the adventure bug, and they love to, to try anything new. So I think the idea is you bring in the whole family, kind of make a fun night or time out of it. And we put together a 5 to 10 year plan of based on where your family is. Maybe you have a few kids who are getting ready to start college in the next few years. This is how I would prioritize and plan ahead. And then the thought is you take that to your wealth advisor and say, can we afford to do this? What are the budgets we should be setting? Because the further out that you plan, the more financially responsible you are and the better rates you're going to get. So that's kind of the idea, is to not call your travel advisor 2 months before Christmas and say, we want to do something. You're obviously paying twice as much in that case.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a common theme that we see with our clients, is that especially when someone first retires, those first 5 years are like the prime travel years, right? And then, after that, like the next 5 years spending kind of decreases a little bit, the next 5 years a little bit more, and then the next 10 to 15 years spending increases, but it's on healthcare, unfortunately, right? But a lot of what we do is tell our clients, hey, this is how much you'll be able to spend in retirement. And most of our clients want to use at least a portion of that budget on traveling. So I think, there's this misconception that using a travel advisor is always super expensive. Why would I waste the money?
Sure.
Yada, yada, yada. Can you kind of dispel that a little bit from your perspective, and why using someone like yourself would be helpful for people?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we do always tell people we're not the cheapest way to book your travel, but I think it comes down to value. And so, when you're working with your wealth advisor, you're talking about return on investment. For us, when this Wanderlust program was started in particular, and it's kind of cheesy, but I also love it, they coined the phrase return on life. So basically, you're putting all of this money into, your leisure time, which really in some ways is your most valuable asset. So if you're spending all of your time Googling and just, throwing out there to AI, where should we go with our family? You may come up with something fine, but I think I would rather invest a little bit more and have an incredible experience than already probably put a lot into it and have a lot of misses or not have the, the customization that you would have with the travel advisor. So on the one hand, because we're so relationship based, the goal is that we've worked with you a million times. We know what you love. I can tell you, you know what, you're not really Four Seasons people. Don't spend that money. Go to this amazing glamping eco lodge in Costa Rica. You're going to love it. Or on the flip side, if I have someone who wants just the most high touch access that we can give them, that's really where the value comes in of, it might take you 6 months to figure out how to get private access to the Sistine Chapel. I can text someone today and we'll figure out if it's possible. So really it's just leveraging relationships. And I think just having someone who can provide that access and open the doors for you.
Yeah, I kind of liken it to like when I'm having conversations with my clients and they're like, hey, like, I'm so glad you're doing this for me. I have no interest in it. I don't know how you do it. And I was like, well, really, it's like any other professional relationship. I'm providing a service that I claim to be an expert in. So I always tell people it's like, if I were ever to have to go to court to defend myself for some reason, I wouldn't represent myself, right? I would hire an attorney because I don't know what I'm doing, right? And I feel like with travel, it's kind of the same thing if you're looking for like a super like specific experience, right? And Kenzie and I have been lucky enough to have you as a close friend of ours, so we've gotten a taste of that, and it really is something that Like you said, if you want to have a really good experience, you don't want to put all of the work into it. In my opinion, totally worth it.
Thank you.
So I guess just talking a little bit about travel and some tips for people maybe that wouldn't be reaching out to you. Do you have any tips for saving on flights, lodging, excursions, when you should be booking these trips, when you should be waiting? I know you touched on that a little bit already, and kind of like where you see people overspending unnecessarily.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing is try to plan as far in advance as you can. We really do see, you can be at a pool over Christmas and the person next to you is in the same room category, but they paid half what you paid because they booked a year in advance and you just booked a month and a half ago. It's sad, but it's so true that if you can plan ahead, you really will save a lot of money. And then the other thing is trying to look at either shoulder season or dupe destinations. So shoulder season in some places like Europe is getting, it's practically non-existent in Europe anymore. But I have tons of people going to Italy over spring break this year instead of going in the summer. And I know you and Kenzie went in January and you had all of Siena to yourselves.
It's great.
Whereas the main complaint that I get from most of my clients who go to Italy is, it was beautiful, but it was so crowded and it was so hot. And I'm like, yes, that is Italy in June.
That was funny because we didn't experience that at all. I was like, we had all the space in the world. We could do whatever we wanted to. And my parents went not that long ago and they were like, oh my God. And everyone's like, Rome is so crowded.
Yeah.
I hated Rome. And Kenzie and I, we were like, we love Rome.
Yeah.
There was no one out. It was perfect.
Right. If you're willing to wear a coat, it's a I think in some ways much better experience.
It was great. And it was 45, 50. So it wasn't even that cold, especially with it being -7 this morning.
Yes.
So,
and then we have people who say, we really want to go to France, but we have this budget and Paris is crazy expensive. So sometimes we'll try to come up with kind of dupe destinations for them. So if we know that they're really interested in, culture or outdoor adventure, but they don't quite have the budget for the destination that they come to us for, I always try to say, this is way out there, but instead of the Hamptons, what if you went to Jose Ignacio in Uruguay? Because it's like the Hamptons of 20 years ago and you're going to pay $400 a night instead of $2,000 a night.
Yeah.
So there's little hacks like that for sure. And a lot of those are kind of the ungooglables that I think travel advisors bring again in terms of value.
Yeah.
If you've been enjoying the Independent Advisors podcast, I'd encourage you to head to our website, jessupwealthmanagement.com. I offer a 15-minute initial call where you can discuss your financial goals and see if JWM is a good fit for your needs. Scheduling is easy. Once you land at the jessupwealthmanagement.com website, just click Schedule Initial Call and select a time that works best for you. There's a quick survey to fill out that will help guide the conversation and ensure your time is used efficiently. If you're ready to learn more, visit jessupwealthmanagement.com and book your call today.
So you talked about kind of some of the perks of working with someone like yourselves. What are some examples of that exclusive access? So you talked about the Sistine Chapel. I think for me, the most beneficial thing was taking the decision-making process out of it, because we come to you and you were like, Lauren, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but we only have time for one. And you knowing our likes and dislikes and just being close personal friends, you're like, no, you guys definitely need to do this. Don't worry about the other two. That was the most beneficial part for me because, when you go to a place like in Italy, you kind of want to do it all and not miss anything, but you also don't want your experience to be crappy because you're exhausted.
Moving every night.
You want to have some downtime and some me time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a while, people thought travel advisors were going to go away because of the internet, but in some ways, the internet has been the greatest blessing to us because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And everyone has a different, backstory and context that they're going to AI or whoever with now and saying, where's the best place in the Dolomites? The Dolomites is the size of combining Vail and Aspen and Park City and like Deer Valley. Like it's huge. So I was just talking with a client about this the other day, and I said, well, I worked with your family for years. I know your son has these dietary restrictions. You really have to have a hotel that can accommodate that. And I think just being able to have that tailored experience that really comes with a relationship. So obviously I'm the best travel advisor to the people that I've worked with for a long time and who use me somewhat regularly, or people that I'm very close with, because I understand who they are. So we always tell people, if you want to start working with us, our hope is that it'll be a long-term relationship, because that's really where the magic starts to happen, is when we can tell you before you even call us what probably is the best next trip for you. So we do have lots of the same perks that frankly you can get through Amex. Like we have priority for upgrade. We have extra hotel credits. We have complimentary breakfast. All of that is always included. I think it's great, but I don't think it's really what sets a travel advisor apart anymore. I think it's just the relationship we have with clients, and then the relationship we have with our partners on the ground, who we can call and say, I need you to make a miracle happen. And they do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really nice. So we got to kind of weave in finances and economics into the podcast somehow. So we talked about kind of retirees and their spending habits a little bit, but do you, from a travel agent perspective, notice a difference in spending and travel habits between people maybe like me, who's a long way away from retirement, and people who are recently retired?
Yes, for sure. I think, people who are recently retired, for sure, travel is always top of mind. Often taking multiple trips a year, and they can travel any time of the year, which is really nice because it works out financially for them to be able to take multiple trips, because they're not constrained to, well, my kids are on break in the summer, or we can only
Spring
travel
break
over the
or
holidays.
winter break.
Yes, when prices surge. So that makes a huge difference, of course. We have noticed, though, that younger travelers are spending on travel at a very different, higher rate than, travelers in their 50s, 60s, that, right pre-retirement. I think when you've got kids who are in college and things, and you're still trying to pay for major life events, of course, travel isn't necessarily highest priority, but I think rising generations are so experiential focused. I was reading an article recently, I think it was Rob Report, that said spending on luxury goods like cars and jewelry and bags and things like that is down, but spending on travel is way up, which I thought was interesting, and certainly it's something that we felt. Whether it's true or not, you could probably speak to that better, but
Right.
It's definitely something that we felt really since the pandemic. The industry pre-2020 versus post-2020, it's crazy. And we try not to take that for granted, but it feels like there's just been a shift in what people value and what they're willing to spend money on. And a lot of that is experiences.
Right. Travel insurance.
Yes.
Waste of money, worth it. And if it's not a waste of money, do you have any horror stories that you can share?
Yes. So, I'll start with prefacing, they can be shisty. I will say that. They
Yeah.
look for loopholes. I have on a couple of occasions had claims denied, but I still always recommend it because of the horror stories. So, for example, this month alone, I had one couple, or I had one family who found out that they were pregnant, and they had already deposited on an African safari. They declined their travel insurance quote, and they couldn't travel because they've, brand new baby.
Right.
So it was $40,000 loss for them. And usually we try to, on many occasions, we have been able to go to the CEO of a company and say, please make an exception. This is a crazy situation, but it's not always possible. So I always recommend travel insurance, particularly for a safari, because camps are very strict. Then I had another couple who was going to India, and something like 4 days away found out that they needed an emergency. The someone needed an emergency surgery, and their trip, which should have been fully non-refundable, was fully refunded through insurance.
Wow.
So, I mean, you just never know what's going to happen, even a week prior to your trip. I think especially if it's a huge investment like a safari or, just anything where you feel like, gosh, if we lost this money, it would really, really knock us out.
Right.
It's just, to me, a no-brainer to get insurance.
And I'm assuming as a percentage of the overall trip and what someone is spending, it really is a small amount to protect that,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it depends on age of the travelers, of course. If you've got kids, it's nice because they actually bring your premium down. But in the grand scheme of percentages, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're like we're going to Florida next week,
Yeah.
right? And we're flying Allegiant out of Cincinnati, and there was like a travel insurance to be able to like get your money back. And I was like, with all the flight trouble
Yeah.
that I have had,
Yes.
I'm
bad
just gonna go
ones.
ahead and do it for $50 or
Yeah,
whatever
for
it
sure.
was, right? We wanted to take a minute and tell you about a service we personally use and trust, LifeLock by Norton. With everything we do online these days, protecting your identity and personal information is more important than ever. That's why we've partnered with LifeLock, a leader in the identity theft protection industry. Their mission is to empower people to live their digital lives safely, offering tools to help protect you and your family from threats like identity theft, cybercrime, and fraud. They combine advanced technology with 24/7 support to keep your information safer in today's connected world. We use it ourselves, and we think it's a valuable tool for anyone looking to add an extra layer of protection. If you're interested in checking it out, you can use our special link to get a discounted rate. As a heads up, we do receive a percentage of compensation if you sign up using our link, but we partnered with LifeLock because we believe in what they offer. To learn more and get the deal, just head to jessupwealthmanagement.com/LifeLock. Okay, last question on kind of economics. What Matt and I usually talk about here is when we talk about the economy, the strength or the weakness of the economy, the higher end consumer doesn't usually tend to shift their spending habits regardless of what's going on. So if you have people like Ferrari is a publicly traded company, right? People don't stop buying Ferraris during economic downtrends because it doesn't really affect that population. Is it kind of similar to travel? The people that you are working with or the clientele that Huffman has, are they high end enough to where spending habits just don't really change?
Yes, we're fortunate in that regard. I think, anytime there's a change in power or you probably get a lot of phone calls when there are certain articles that are published, and we get those too. But overall, I think people are pretty hardy and continue the spending, especially since the pandemic has been, many times higher than it was pre-2020, and it continues to grow. And I think part of that is changing priorities for, up and coming generations. I think part of it is just a shift in priorities for many people. Whatever it is, we don't take it for granted, but it is great to see that people continue to invest a lot of their money and their time in travel.
So talk about that a little bit more, how, spending habits have shifted pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. I know you've talked about it just for a couple seconds here already. Is it they're spending more? They're going on more frequent trips. The type of trips they're going on is different. Like, how has that changed?
All of the above, really. We're seeing a lot of multi-gen travel where you have these retirees who are taking their kids, their grandkids, could be 30 people, doing an amazing villa stay or chartering a yacht for a week or safari. A lot of these really big ticket items that are happening with multi-gen families. So that's probably been the biggest thing that I've noticed. And also people are just spending, unfortunately, some of it is forced by the hotels in the industry, because you see hotels in Italy, 5-star hotels, that charge €2,000 entry rate like it's nothing. And if you want to spend $1,000 a night, which of course, anyone would think that's a wonderful budget. You're, and many times in a shoebox.
Right.
So it's just some of it has been, it's kind of cyclical where people are spending more. And then as a result, the threshold has gotten a lot higher.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So as we kind of move towards the end here, I know that, some people's perception is that it's really expensive to work with someone like yourself, right? So if you're comfortable with it, can you just touch on how travel agents make money?
Of course. Yeah. Yes. I think it's so important to be transparent. So two ways. Our company charges a upfront design fee, which I think really is industry standard now, especially post-COVID, because we realized during that time that if all else fails, it's really our only way that we're compensated for our time. So we do charge a design fee. For us, it starts at $1,000 per week of travel. And there are different models. Some will do hourly, some will do annual retainers. It just depends on what what you're looking for and who you're working with. Okay. But the primary way, though, that a travel advisor is compensated is the old-fashioned way, which is through commission. So airlines, they don't care about us anymore. There's no commission there. But hotels and guides and things like that, they will basically say, because you brought this business to us, we're going to give you whatever that negotiated percentage is. So if you do a ton of sales with a certain company, they may pay you a higher commission percentage than they pay someone else. But it's typically somewhere between 10 and 15%. If you were to book that hotel directly online, for you as the customer, it's the exact same cost. But because we bring the business, the benefit to us is we get a commission. And the benefit to you is you get all the perks and our relationships and the fact that we have dinner with the GM at our travel conference every year and that kind of thing. So it's, a win-win. With hotels, because of that, we don't even charge a design fee just to book a hotel. It's more for the bespoke itineraries where that would even apply.
Right. Well, ending kind of on a fun note, in your opinion, what are some of the more popular destinations today? And can you give us a few under the radar destinations for people to consider?
Yes. So Asia is still hot.
Okay.
Japan,
literally and figuratively.
Yes, and always. But for a while, we're like, oh my gosh, if we get one more request for Japan.
Yeah.
But Japan is still very popular, but I think I'm seeing a lot of people doing new. So Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, they're kind of the core three that everybody wants. But now we're seeing Bhutan, Mongolia, people who are talking about going back to China. So Asia continues to be very popular. And then within Europe, some secondary destinations are kind of emerging because I think Italy, France, the big hitters are getting so oversaturated with tourism. They're always going to be popular, but people want to get away from the crowds. So we've been loving Slovenia. It's, the hotel accommodations are still boutique, but it's very gorgeous landscapes, and it combines so well with Venice or Croatia. And then the big one in Italy, the new destination this year for sure is Sardinia. Gorgeous beaches. The Europeans have gone there forever, but Americans just figured out that it has some of the prettiest beaches in Europe. So
yeah,
that's been a big one.
That actually just made me think of another question really quick. Like when someone comes to you and they want to go to somewhere like a China where, there's political tensions or, the governments don't get along, like how do you work through that?
So we're always really honest and say, like, A, do we feel it's safe? B, if you are depositing on this itinerary and then something happens, what are the repercussions? That was the case for Egypt for a long time because of everything happening in the Middle East.
Yeah.
It was kind of tricky and touch and go for a bit, but we do, we always make sure that we know exactly what the booking terms and conditions are, how much flexibility there is, what's covered with travel insurance and what's not, because how they defined a terrorist event is different than how we might.
Right.
So it's a lot of red tape sometimes, and it's very time consuming, but it's what we do, and it's what other people don't want to waste their time doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, it's a good service to offer. Well, Lauren, this has been a great discussion. Before we wrap up, where can people go to follow you, get in contact with you if they want to talk travel?
Yes, please. Give us a call at Huffman Travel. We're also on our website. We have a button in the top right corner that says, start my trip. So that's just the great place to get started and fill out a little bit about who you are and what you're looking for. And then one of our advisors would reach out.
Great. Awesome. Well, Lauren, thank you again. And thank you all for listening to episode 336 of the Independent Advisors podcast. We will be back with you next week for episode 337.
Thank you for listening to the Independent Advisors podcast. If you're interested in hearing more, hit the subscribe button so you can be notified every time a new episode gets released. Feel free to share with friends, family, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and X. Mark and Matt will continue to share beneficial information on these social media sites. Also, check out the podcast tab on their website. That's www.jessupwealthmanagement.com. There you'll find links to every episode of the Independent Advisors. Have questions or topics you want to discuss on the show? Send an email with the words questions and topics in the subject line to inquiries@jessupwealthmanagement.com. We'll talk about it right here on the podcast. Certain sections of this commentary may contain forward-looking statements based on reasonable expectations, estimates, projections, and assumptions. Forward-looking statements are not guarantees of future performance and involve certain risks and uncertainties which are difficult to predict. All indices are unmanaged and are not available for direct investment by the public. Past performance is not indicative of future results. This podcast is provided for general informational purposes only and does not constitute either tax, legal, or financial advice. Although we do go to great lengths to make sure our information is accurate and useful, we recommend you consult a tax preparer, professional tax advisor, financial advisor, or lawyer regarding your specific circumstances. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. No strategy can guarantee any objective or goal will be achieved.